Thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen. Before the year ends, it's time to give midseason flowers. ACC reporter Jenna Cuniowski breaks down the star freshman's game and how other teams in the ACC could stop her, if at all. And we're talking about Hannah Hidalgo from Notre Dame women's basketball. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
It is December 28th, and that means a lot of people are making lists. That's New Year's resolutions. That's ranking the past year. And one list that I want to point out is the AP Top 25 poll. Right now, the ACC has 6 teams in that top 25, and we're going to discuss them all. But first, we're going to give our flowers to Hidalgo and with the Fighting Irish before we dive into why Louisville can't last to the second half, the undefeated Wolfpack at NC State, which Jenna is very familiar with, and why they have been victorious this season. I'm Gigi Speer, WNBA beat reporter and social media correspondent for The Next. I've followed Jenna's ACC work all season long, and I'm so excited to break down the conference with one of its best minds. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Jenna, let's get you in here. So we could go through all of Hannah's stats and her highlights right now, but I want to talk about that freshman with you. She just was named the AP National Player of the Week after her career triple-double. So let's just get into it. What have you seen out of Hannah this season for people who might not know her or know the Fighting Irish too well?
Yeah, she's just been really spectacular across the board. And I feel like at this point, we're kind of done saying oh, she's amazing for a freshman, because she's just awesome, period. Across, she's leading Notre Dame in, she averages 20 plus points for Notre Dame, which is insane for an already amazing team. That people were kind of doubting, by the way, because they had Olivia Miles is out and Sonia Citrone has been injured since way earlier in the season. But Hannah stepped up as a freshman and was able to say I got this, no worries, which has been awesome all around. And I feel something that's worth pointing out too is it's a lot of confidence from her. Obviously she's a really skilled player, but the ability to come into a team like Notre Dame and to kind of step up and become that lead scorer, even dish out as many assists as she does, comes with a lot of confidence. And coming into college basketball with that confidence isn't always easy, especially in a conference like the ACC when Notre Dame is playing such a tough schedule.
Absolutely. And where have you seen that conversation shift from, oh, she's so good for a freshman, to now, oh no, she's really good and she could lead this team? Has there been a moment that kind of made that shift happen for you?
I don't know if there's been a moment specifically, but it's just been her consistency across games. Because obviously, I think a lot of people know she came out in Notre Dame's first game against South Carolina, and she scored 30 points, which was insane to do against any team in your first game as a freshman, but especially against the number 1 team in the nation. But then she proved that wasn't a fluke. She continued to back that up across the following games. And I think that's when it really started to set in for people. She's an amazing player. She's not just good for a freshman.
Absolutely. And we're talking about the AP national poll out of 25 teams. South Carolina is ranked first right now. Yeah. The Fighting Irish are at the 11th spot right now. So for you, like you said, she definitely made a mark after that first game against South Carolina. And what have you seen? You mentioned her confidence, but she's also a walking highlight reel, I feel like. And that's why people are so drawn to her and her crazy assists. Has there been one that stood out to you in the past couple games?
I don't think it was in the past couple games. I think it was early in the season, but there was a clip that went viral of just a mid-game, behind the back assist that was like wild to me. I think I watched it a couple times because I was like, and that again comes back to the confidence thing, like having the confidence to do that in a game as a freshman is crazy. And she pulled it off and she did it really well. So
absolutely. Yeah. And even on Sunday, she had 23 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists, 7 steals in 34 minutes played. So for this freshman who's obviously so confident, can dish out assists, is getting to know her team and making the system work for her. How is she able to get these rebounds too? I mean, she is running up the numbers on the rebounds all season.
Yeah, her energy, I feel like, is almost unmatched by anyone in college basketball. Like, she kind of reminds me of how Paige Beckers came in when she was a freshman, how she kind of like took the nation by storm, and like very much like Hannah had a lot of confidence, was very flashy in the way that she played, like went viral a lot for her like kind of like flashy assists, and I don't know, was just like very successful off the bat.
Yeah, that is such an interesting comparison. And I don't think a lot of people are making that comparison to Paige, but I think that's what we see out of great players who go on to have a successful career after college too, is they come in freshman year and it's like, oh no, she keeps doing it week after week. So for you, as conference play continues to ramp up with the ACC, who do you think would be her biggest, let's say, like opponent to look out for?
I would say we kind of mentioned earlier Georgia Moore. I feel like is a kind of a similar player, not as aggressive as Hannah, I don't think, but like similar in the way that she's an amazing playmaker, a great defender, dishes out a lot of assists to her teammates while being a really impactful scorer herself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I like that. And we'll get more into Georgia more after this next break. But let's wrap this up on Hannah a little bit. So she got ACC Rookie of the Week for the 4th time this season. And she, like you said, scored 31 against South Carolina in her college debut. So let's get crazy right now. I know it's way too early to make a projection for her, but what would you see out of her? Do you feel like we're past the great players transferring to other schools? Do you think she's going to be with the Fighting Irish for years? Do you think she's going to go to the W? Any future that you see for her? I mean, it's a time to look into the future as this year ends. So what do you see for Hannah Hidalgo's future?
I honestly hadn't thought about that, but that's a great point, because even like a player like we talked about Louisville earlier, Haley Van Lith, like you wouldn't think she transferred. Like Louisville was doing great. Like she was a great player on that team. But I guess I would say I hope Hannah doesn't transfer. I think she's a great fit for Notre Dame and she's playing really well with them. But I also, given like what Haley Van Lith did and what like a lot of great players are doing now, I wouldn't be surprised if she transferred to another team. But I do think she would probably, I don't think she'd go into the WNBA or like that she's looking that far ahead. Like I think eventually, obviously, but like I think she really wants to make the most of her like college years first.
Yes, 1 year at a time. Keep having fun, keep playing with it too. And so you would say they continue to do well throughout ACC play? Is that your prediction for Notre Dame?
I would think so. Yeah, especially as they're getting their better players back. Like I don't think there's a timeline for Olivia Miles, but I think Sonia Citrone is set to come back in the next couple of weeks. So that'll be really exciting to see them playing together.
It will be the full team back, full throttle, at a really good time in the season too. And we're going to get more into ACC basketball after this break. And we just want to say that we are sponsored by eBay Motors. For parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. We are also sponsored by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LockedOnNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. Okay. Now, we're going to keep on talking more ACC basketball, but for other sports, head over to Locked On Sports today on YouTube for a national covering of all different sports, NBA, NFL, anything else you can imagine. So, Jenna, let's keep on going with ACC talk. So you brought up the two conversations already that we're going to be having right now. So first of all, Georgia Amoore, some people are projecting her to go very far in the draft. But right now, she is doing great things. And in Virginia Tech's 84-59 win over Rutgers on Sunday, she hit 5 3-pointers. So are you surprised at all? Where did those 5 3-pointers come from? Or should people be used to this from her at this point?
I would say people should definitely be used to this from her. Like, obviously, Virginia Tech was a force in the ACC last year, won the ACC championship. And Georgia Moore was obviously a really big part of that. So I'm not surprised at all that she's kind of continued that dominance into this year, especially in like non-conference play when they're playing they played a couple challenging teams. They played LSU and Iowa, but against a team like Rutgers, I'm not surprised that she was able to kind of clean up at the 3-point line.
Yeah, monster 84-59 win. So do you see carryover from that championship squad last year into this year, if at all?
I think so, yeah, because they still have Amoore, and obviously Liz Kitley in the post has been really big for them. I don't see them being as dominant as they were last year, especially given the rise of other teams in the ACC, such as like NC State and Notre Dame, but they definitely still have they haven't fallen off in any sense of the word.
And when you see them, you're saying that out of Hannah, you see confidence from this freshman. When you watch Georgia play, what would be the one word you would use to describe her?
That's a good question. I would say of her ability to handle the ball, she's very shifty and she's very good at making her opponents look kind of clueless. There was a clip that went viral, maybe it was last week. It might have been against Rutgers, where she totally just turned her girl around and had her spinning in circles while she was already at the basket, laying the ball in. But she's definitely has that ability to create plays for herself and also create plays for her teammates, which I think is a really special quality in a player, because she doesn't feed off of her teammates or feed off of how her team is doing. She has the ability to come into the game and make that difference herself, regardless of how everyone else is doing.
Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's just transformed. And that's what Georgia Amoore can do. So the former Hawkeye, Aisha Shepard, currently holds the all-time record for career 3-pointers made at 402. Amoore right now has 271 after Sunday's win against Rutgers. Okay, simple math. Do you see her breaking this record?
I don't think so, just because she doesn't have a ton of time left to do that. But that is an insane record, given the number 2 spot is 270, 271, I think it was, when Amoore broke it. But to score 130 more threes in the season would be a lot, I think, even for Georgia Amoore.
Yeah, I agree. I think she'd probably have to put 5 to 10 threes per game, every game, and that's pretty crazy. So besides shooting, then, even if she doesn't break that record, what have you seen her impact be on the court? Yeah, you mentioned her energy that she brings to this game too. Is there another aspect of her game that you don't think people give her enough credit for?
I think definitely her defense. She's been a solid defender all season, which I guess does come back to energy, how she's able to kind of use that energy on both sides of the floor and really lock down her target on defense, as well as performing really well on offense.
Huge. Be a two-way player. I think that's what a lot of teams are looking for. And that is why she's getting the attention, I think, in people's draft boards that she is right now too, because a lot of teams are in need of defense. So again, way too early, but we're going to do some predictions here. So Georgia Amoore, would you say she's going to go top 10 in the WNBA draft?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Okay. All right. I see that too. And then what about her team? How do you see Virginia Tech finishing out the season?
I would put them definitely, I think last year they were number one by far. Like no one was surprised that they took the ACC championship, but I would put them probably still in the top 3 this year, but definitely not as, I guess, dominant as they were last year.
And who's going to be that biggest foe for them in conference play, would you say?
I would say probably either NC State or Notre Dame is going to give them a lot of problems.
Okay. All right. I could see that too. Yes, Notre Dame 9-1 right now. Virginia Tech 9-2 in this season so far. So yes, I see that too. What would be the difference then? So say Virginia Tech is showing up to a game against Notre Dame. How could they come away with a win?
I think Notre Dame, a lot of their play is centered around their guards, such as Hannah Hidalgo, who we talked a lot about. So the difference is going to be in the post with Liz Kitley, and it's going to be whether or not she's able to dominate and if they're able to like shut her down in the post, which is very difficult to do. So if they're able to get the ball into her and she's able to make her moves as she wants to, then I think that they're going to give them a tough time.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, when they go small, we go big. When they go big, we go small. Why not? And to wrap up this segment too, I want to talk about Louisville, and I don't even think we'll cover everything that we need to cover. But you said something about Louisville caught your attention. What was that?
Yeah, they played UConn, I believe it was like a week and a half ago. They played really well, played them really close in the first half. They were only down by single-digit points at the half and then ended up losing by like close to 20 points by the end of the game and were outscored by a lot in the second half, which is concerning because obviously you want a team that can hang on throughout the game and play consistently throughout the game and come out in the second half and play just as hard as they did in the first. But we just didn't see that when they played UConn. They just weren't able to keep it together in the second half, which is UConn's obviously a very talented team, so you have to give them that. But I think like if you can play them in the first half, why can't you play them in the second half? You know, so that's where you start to think it's kind of a question of like their energy and their ability to be consistent instead of like UConn being a tough opponent.
Okay, I see. I got you. So it's more like they lost the game. It's not that UConn pulled out a UConn type win.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And for you, someone who's covering this conference, is that something that you expect out of this team?
Not really. Louisville's been, I feel like they've been a pretty consistent team this season. I think there were a lot of concerns about them with Haley Van Lith transferring to LSU, like who's going to be their big scorer this year. But they kind of spread it across 3 different players, Kiki Jefferson, Olivia Cochran, and Sydney Taylor, all averaging in the double digits and kind of as a team are making up for the absence of like Haley Van Lith's like insane scoring ability. So definitely like that about them, that they have a more balanced attack. And I think that makes it harder almost to defend them because you're not focusing on that one player. So I was kind of surprised about their loss to UConn because having that consistency you'd think would translate over into those bigger games, but they just weren't able to perform at that level.
Yeah, this is probably why they call it March Madness come springtime.
Yeah.
We're going to talk more ACC basketball in just a bit. And we're actually going to go into a little bit more of a New Year's resolution kind of way of viewing this conference. Lots more Locked On Women's Basketball coming up throughout this entire week. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, so Jenna, I'm kind of saving your team for last, and I'm saying your team because you go to this school, and I know how it is to be working in sports, and you just happen to always come across the stories about your school. So it's a way different way to cover a league. So talk to me about NC State. What is going on this year with NC State?
Yeah, I think they came out and they had that statement win against UConn, second win of the season. Everyone was talking about that, especially Sanaya Rivers, 33 points in that game, which is, a great way to start the season against any team, but against UConn is crazy. And they've only continued to back up that performance. And Sanaya hasn't had such an amazing performance since then, but so many other players have stepped up. And I think that's what makes them a real threat in the ACC is that they have 5 players averaging in the double digits right now, which I believe is the most of any team in the ACC. which makes them really hard to defend because you don't know if is Isaiah James going to have a great game today, or Zoe Brooks, or is River Baldwin really going to be dominant in the post. So it makes it really, really difficult to play against them because they are so balanced and they have so many players that are making huge contributions.
Yes. And can we talk about River Baldwin too and her double-double, where they were able to come away with the win over South Florida 66-54 because of her 16 points. What have you seen from her and her game throughout this entire season?
Yeah, she's been really huge this year, especially compared to last year. She was kind of coming off the bench behind Camille Hobby, and she wasn't despite her size, because she is like, I believe 6'3", I want to say, and like also like wide, I guess, like is a big presence in the post, but she didn't really establish herself in that way last year in the way that she has this year. And I think part of it is also NC State's guards like Isaiah James, Sanaya Rivers, and Zoe Brooks being such a threat on the 3-point line and attacking from the outside that they're not able to give so much attention on the post, like on the inside, because they can't come in and double, because then the guards are going to burn them on the 3-point line. So that's really given River Baldwin the opportunity to dominate on the inside.
Okay, I see that. And do you think that there's like, is there anything about her game that you're like, oh my God, people do not talk about this enough with Baldwin?
I don't know. It's really just with her, I think it's just overall dominance. Like, she does a really good job of establishing her presence early on in the game. And I think in the games where she's done really well, it's because she's like scored a lot in the first quarter and kind of like established herself early as a threat in the post. So I guess maybe that's something that people don't talk about, is that's like a big part of her game, is like getting out there early and scoring early. And like, that's how I feel like she gets a lot of her points. Like, she's not scoring later in the game, like she's getting them going early. So she's oftentimes like that initial spark for NC State.
Yeah, and that helps so much too as a guard. Then you could kick it out. And Rivers, you mentioned, this is now Sanaya Rivers, 33 points against UConn earlier this season. When she's back, what do you see from her, and how is she able to rack up the points like she's able?
Yeah, I think that I'm really excited to see her back, because now with the way that Zoe Brooks has stepped up into like more like the point guard position, she's able to play on the wing a little bit more. Like, she will be able to when she comes back, which is really where like we saw her thrive last year. And against UConn, like, she was still the primary ball handler, because Zoe Brooks, like, it was her second game at the college level. So she wasn't, she played very well, but she wasn't as comfortable, I don't think, as she is now. So when Rivers comes back, I'm really excited to see how she plays with Zoe Brooks and Isaiah James, because she won't have as much of that responsibility as handling the ball. So that gives her a lot of opportunity to play off the ball, which I think she's really good at.
And she definitely is. And the entire team is too. The only ACC team still undefeated at an 11-0 right now. When you're at these games, because I'm assuming you go, describe to us the atmosphere, because most of us can't make it down to NC State. I'd love to, but walk us through what it would be like inside this arena.
Yeah, Reynolds we joke around a lot at the the student newspaper I work at, because Courtney Banghart, the coach at UNC Chapel Hill, had made a comment last year about we'll have no problem playing in like their small gym, because it's a relatively small gym, especially like compared to UNC's and compared to like other arenas in the ACC. But I think that's what makes like the experience like so amazing, and like also so great for the players, because it gets packed in there and it's so loud. And it's a great atmosphere to play basketball in, especially when they've sold out, I think, I want to say like 10 games this season. They set a program record for like how many games they've sold out. And when Reynolds gets packed, it's an insane amount of energy, and you can tell that the players are feeding off of that energy. And I think that's part of the reason they played really well against UConn, because it was a home game and they had so much energy in that gym.
It is helpful. And it is kind of helpful to have a smaller gym. I've definitely experienced that, and I know it well. So, okay, that is definitely a great atmosphere. I would love to be a part of it. Let's pivot away from NC State. Of course, if you have any final comments about the squad. Be happy to hear them. But there's a couple other teams in the ACC we haven't talked about yet. We could talk about we really could talk about Clemson. We could talk about so many different teams, but like I mentioned, there's 6 teams in the AP Top 25 poll, including Louisville, including Florida State. So for you, what would be another team that you would say people should definitely look out for in this new year?
I would say probably UNC, as much as I hate to say it as an NC State student. UNC definitely has the ability, I think, as they kind of took a moment in like end of November, beginning of December, where they were kind of like getting it together. They had a couple losses all in a row. But even like watching those losses, you can kind of tell like this is a team that has the potential to come out and be dominant. I was they played South Carolina early on in December, and they played them really well. They still lost the game, but the way that they were able to defend South Carolina and score against South Carolina, which is a team that's like obviously so dominant in a lot of different areas, I think showed like for me that they have the ability to play these ACC teams at like a really high level. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of like made an appearance in like at least like the top 5 in the ACC.
Okay, I know it's tough to say for your rival too. And what about their coaching? What about UNC's coaching? Have you seen as a notable part about this team?
I think they're really well coached. Courtney Banghart, I think, focuses a lot on their defensive game plan, which really showed when they played South Carolina and they were able to contain Camila Cardoso, who's been dominant in the post all year long, is like a big part of their success.
Okay. Yeah, that takes great coaching. All right, Jenna, this is the end, sadly, of our episode. So tell people, where can they find you and where can they find all this work?
Yeah, so obviously you can find me on The Next Hoops. I write ACC content there. And then also Technician Online is NC State student newspaper. And I write a lot of NC State women's basketball focused content there. So.
Okay, awesome. Everybody check out Jenna. Jenna, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And I know the Locked On Women's Basketball Network is so happy to hear from you. And there's so many other great shows coming out this entire week. So everybody stay tuned. Make sure you make Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. You can find me at Twitter, Gigi_Speer. And listen to this on YouTube too. You could watch it. We both set up our cameras nicely. So if you want to watch along, please feel free. But that wraps up this edition of Locked On Women's Basketball. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. You can find me, like I said, on Twitter at Gigi_Speer, or feel free to email me if you find that. Anyway, thank you so much. For more Locked On content, head over to YouTube for Locked On Sports Today and check out all your other favorite sports. But Jenna, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your rainy day. And thank you again for making this your first listen.
Awesome. Thank you.